Good evening, everyone. It was lovely to see Brian Charles Lara on television after a long time, and he was here last year, I believe. He's one of my favorite players, to be honest, one of the best left-handers I've seen ever. I haven't seen Sir Garfield Sobers play, but this man was special. The best thing I like about this man was, before we start about a leadership talk, I remember going to the West Indies as captain in 2002, and he was playing for the West Indies. And he was never a favorite for the team managers and the team officials, because he had his own life, he had his own way of playing cricket. I remember asking him one fine morning before the Antigua Test match, and it's on a lighter note. I asked Brian that I've been reading in the newspapers about your discipline and you coming back late before a test match. He said, yeah, there's been a bit of a problem. So I said, how are you dealing with it? He said, I came back yesterday about 1 o'clock in the night, because cricket's getting a bit boring. I play day in, day out every day, so I needed a bit of a break. And my manager calls me up at 1 o'clock and said, Brian, I need to see you tomorrow. He said, fine, we'll meet each other tomorrow. And then he keeps on saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, you can't be so late out of the hotel, and you've got a test match tomorrow. So he listens to him for 5 minutes and just says, call me when you're ready. And he puts the phone down. And next morning we were playing in Antigua. The test match is one of his favorite grounds. He lives in Trinidad, and he got a 300 in that ground against England, Brian Lara, and he went on to get 100. And then he came back after the game and went straight to the manager's room and said, I am ready. Are you ready to speak to me? The manager said, yeah, fine, well played. So that's why I'm such a big fan of Brian Lara. His bat did all the talking rather than his mouth. Leadership, I get attached to Indian cricket a lot through leadership, through my captaincy skills. And one word or one statement of one of my very famous and dear colleague, Rahul Dravid, I liked on television after I finished cricket. And when everybody asked him about Sourav Ganguly, the captain, and what difference he made to Indian cricket, he said that don't forget his 20,000 runs as a player, which is different as a captain. So I said, well done, Jam, at least you recognize me as a player, because all I get to hear is about leadership, captaincy. I could bat and bowl a bit as well. Obviously we have a lot of leaders in this room, and have been previously in different functions like this where I have had to speak about leadership. And we are all leaders in different aspects of life. And why I'm saying this is because all of us, whether it was Sourav Ganguly when he played test matches for India, or when he captained India, whether most of you who are CEOs and chairmen and bosses of your companies and different groups of people, you don't become a leader in one day. You don't get to that position in one day. All of us, I became captain after playing 5 years for India, and I'm sure most of you have spent years and years in your companies, in different companies, to get to where you are. And I'm a firm believer when I see this tagline today that which we have, winning through transformative leadership. As much as I understand and believe that leadership is something which is very important in any team effort, as much as cricket is a team game, running an organization is a team game. A lot of your skills as a leader, you learn when you come in new. And I can say that from my experience. When I first came into international cricket in the year 1991, I was just 17 and a half years of age, and I went on to the tour of Australia. And I remember the first day we landed in Western Australia, in Perth. India weren't great travelers those days, and we used to travel in Australia once every 7 years, 8 years. So by the time we got used to the pace and bounce of the pitch, the series was over. And I remember going to Australia in 1991 and landing in Perth for our first side game. And invariably India would go to Australia and they would put you the first game of the series on the quickest pitches in the world, which was the Wacker at that time. We landed and I came down to the hotel room, down to the lobby, and I met one of the greatest players India has produced for a long time. And he was looking for company for dinner. And I was sitting at one corner of the lobby, and he said, "Come, young man, let's have dinner." I said, "Fine." I couldn't say no. I didn't know whether it was fine or not, but I couldn't say no. and we walked along the pavement of Western Australia, Perth, which is a beautiful city. It's different from the Australian cities. It's a bit warmer. It's on the seaside. Most of you must have visited Perth. And as I walked down the pavement and entered into a Chinese restaurant for dinner, we were talking about cricket, talking about the team, and the first thing he told me was, I didn't feel that you should have been on this side. And I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to say. He said, you're an exceptional player, but this is a tough tour. Maybe he said it in a good sense. Maybe he meant good for me, saying that, you come and make a debut in India where the wickets are slower, wickets are a bit lower, and life's a lot easier. He said that we should have gotten an experienced player, but try and make the most of what you learn out of this tour. We were in Australia for 3.5 months. We didn't win anything. And we hardly managed to take test matches to 5 days, except in Adelaide, which was a flat belter and pitch which didn't have much bounce. And those words in my ears echoed for the next 3 months. Sometimes I felt miserable about it. Sometimes I felt that it should not have been said to a 17-year-old boy. But I think when I came back from the tour of Australia and didn't play for India for the next 4 years, it really helped me. You realize that it was a world where you had to be tough. It was a world where it was, once you crossed that line, once you went onto the 22 yards, it was about you and the bowler. And I think that influenced a lot when I became captain of India. I came back in the national side in 1996 and went on to become captain of India in the year 2000. And that's the first and foremost thing I learned about leadership, because everybody wants to be a leader, everybody wants to captain the side, whichever side they play, the cricket side, the football side. There's a recognition of your contribution to the game, to the team, and your performances. So the first thing when I became a leader, I thought about that day of mine, and I came into a situation where there were young boys in the side. We were going through a little bit of a rough time in Indian cricket, and we needed to pick young players. I don't know whether that helped or whether it, without my knowledge, created an atmosphere for me to create a team. But the first thing I realized that if I have to be a good leader, I will have to identify the right talent. I will have to make these players feel comfortable in this dressing room. Because when you see young players walking into a dressing room and they look around, and we had a star-studded dressing room, the likes of Tendulkar, Dravid, Lakshman, Kumble, who were great champions. To build a good team through your leadership skills, you had to create an atmosphere for those young boys. Because when they come in, they don't talk much, they look around what's happening in the dressing room. And I'm sure it's exactly in your corporate offices when you hire young professionals, all educated professionals from various IITs, various management schools, and they come under the leadership of some of you who are so experienced in this world. It's about watching. It's about watching what's happening around. And if that part of your system is not good, you will never create a good team. My first basic essence I thought was of being a good leader is picking a good team. I've always believed cricket is a team game, and a captain, to an extent, is as good as his team. Yes, a good captain creates a team around him as much as a good leader, in most of your case, has people around him who will actually help them to get the team better, the work better. But I'm a firm believer that a captain is as good as his team. So for me, the first criteria when I became captain was not only to create an atmosphere, but also to make sure that I had the right players in my squad. You may not like everyone. I still remember Shane Warne and Steve Waugh, who played together for 15 years. And I hope there are not many journalists in this room. Shane Warne and Steve Waugh, who played most of their careers together. And they were two champions, but never the best of friends. But they found an atmosphere, a professionalism to make sure that Australia played the best cricket when they were together. Even now, when you hear about them, they will respect each other, but you could make out that they were never the best of friends. I remember asking Shane Warne one day at the Wankhede Stadium as a commentator, who do you think was Australia's best batsman? He said, Ricky Ponting by yards. I asked him, what about Steve Waugh? He said he was selfish. So I didn't want to ask him the next question, because I knew what the answer was. He only played for himself. in a typical Australian manner, Shane Warne manner. And but I said, everybody says he was the best Australia had. He said, yeah, I don't believe it. But the essence of this thing is that there were two people who were greats, who were all-time greats in world cricket, found an atmosphere and an environment to create a good team. So identification of talent is most important. It's not just about your friend. It's not just about who will be a yes man. But I think the biggest challenge of leadership is about identifying the best guy, making him work under you, and make sure he delivers for you and the team. I firmly believed that when I was captain and I had this responsibility, I would say, along with the selectors, to pick the national side. And you must have read it in the newspapers, you must have known also watching cricket in India over a period of time that the captain has a huge say in picking the team. And you may have a coach, you may have a director, but at the end of the day, cricket is a team game, a leader's game. And I'm sure in your profession, it's about a leader's game as well. So for the most important thing for a captain was to identify the right person. And I firmly believed that I wouldn't hurry in picking someone, and I'm sure you guys do the same thing. You go through different processes. You have your HR departments in your office, in your companies, who decide who's the right guy to assist you in your jobs, in your projects. It was about allowing a player with time to blossom. I never picked anyone on the basis of one performance. A lot of young players came in when I was captain of India because of all what was happening around in Indian cricket, the likes of Virender Sehwag, Harbhajan Singh, Yuvraj Singh. And when the selectors would come to you and say that this fellow is good, the first question I asked was, how long have you seen him? How long have you allowed him an opportunity to perform in domestic cricket? Because I firmly believe that if I picked someone, I wouldn't let him go straight away. You don't pick him straight away, and once you pick him, you back him to perform. You want an environment where there is no fear of failure, because I think that's the most important part of leadership. When a young boy walks into the dressing room or walks into a big multinational like Dell and sees the big professionals from all over the world coming in and interviewing you, expecting the profits at the end of the year on the balance sheet from you, there is a fear of failure. What is it if I can't? That's the biggest fear all professionals have, whether it's a sportsman, whether it's a corporate professional. What is if I fail? And I think that's the biggest challenge of a leader, is to make sure that you create the right situation where as a player, as an employee, your mind just gets off from all other aspects except your job at hand. For us, it was about the cricket ball. As a batsman, when you walked out to bat in the middle, once you crossed that rope, it was about the red cherry or the white cricket ball, whichever you played. So for me, the most important thing was when I picked a young guy, I took the fear of failure about him. It was about telling him that, listen, I will give you 4 games, 5 games. And it's not going to be decided overnight, but you have to give me performance after 4 or 5 games. He should not think about what's the captain thinking. He should not worry about what's the selector thinking. He should not worry about what happens if he gets a good delivery up front from Glenn McGrath. Because you need to take away all that insecurities out of that person and create a situation for him where he delivers, where he believes that I have support, I know this is where I need to go, and this is the time I have. And I think that's a very important aspect of creating a good team. It's about security. Not to an extent where it goes to a situation where you take your position for granted, but it's a balance which you have to strike between you and your important team member, that you would get certain amount of opportunities, but you will have to deliver from that. And at the same time, you won't be dropped over one failure. I've seen a lot of terrific cricketers in Indian cricket in the past, when I was playing as a player, come in, get picked, play 1 or 2 games, and then be left out and their careers are over. I think that's a huge area where we all as leaders need to work on. Now when we appoint a group of people, when we are leaders of a group of people, and it worked so much in our environment, in our sport, it was the trust which the players had on the captain. I keep saying this word trust because we lived in a life where we were selected, and it's the same thing about you. You get selected by your bosses, you get selected by your of people in the higher departments than you, and we needed to go and report to the selection committee. As a captain, you needed to go and select a team. So there were guys who would miss out because you would only get to pick 15. And the challenge we faced in our sport was that we had only one team to play. Today, most of you, if you don't work for an X company, can go and get an equal amount of job in the Y or Z or any number of companies. But the challenge, an athlete or a sportsman who played for his country, was that there was only one team. And everybody wanted to be a part of that side. And there, if a leader wanted to create a team, he had to create a trust between his players, between his group and himself, because no one performs all the time. No one plays I wouldn't say no one, not all play for long periods of time. There are some who play for 15 years, there are some who play for 7 years. So there's always a process of selection, rejection, picking boys and dropping boys. And at the same time, you had to bring those boys back into the squad. So it was about creating a trust between you and the players, because the players knew that you had to go and sit in the selection committee meeting and select their careers. So if you felt that somebody wasn't good enough, it was about letting him know and speaking the same thing in front of the selectors. Because if you didn't do that, there's a certain mistrust which definitely starts creeping among the team, because the word of mouth spreads. There are friends in the group who get rejected, would speak to a friend, and the selectors, and they all try and find a way out to say that, listen, your captain has said this. And that's when the real problem starts in a group. When you come and say something different to your employee or your player and say a completely different thing in the selection committee meeting. So trust is key. Trust is something which needs to develop over a span of time. I'll relate a small incident. And we were touring England in 2002. I was captain, and we were playing Sri Lanka in Edgbaston. And we had someone like Virendra Sehwag who only knew one way to play. He knew only one way to bat. I remember that incident. We all speak about the NatWest final, and England got 325. And I remember walking down the Lord's staircase. We were going out to bat, chasing 325, and I heard Virendra Sehwag singing. He was just walking past me, and he was singing a Hindi song. So I stopped for a minute and said, "What's up, Viru?" He said, "No, everything's fine." And we had lost 4 finals before that, so I was pretty disappointed at the lunchtime that England had got another 300 and we had to chase 300. We might not get it. And it was another final we had to lose. And there was one guy walking down next to me, whistling away. So I told him, the day you become captain, I'll do the same thing when we get down the staircase of the Lord's balcony. I remember Virendra Sehwag in Edgbaston, and we was chasing a very small total against Sri Lanka, about 209 or 10 to win that game on a seaming pitch. And I had got out early, and I came back into the dressing room and was watching the game. And Virendra Sehwag kept on hitting the ball in the air. John Wright was sitting next to me, and he's one of the most nervous persons I have ever met. When India played and when India batted, the freezer in the dressing room was in danger, because he would walk up to the freezer, open the door, take water out, bang it back, and I'm sure the organizers had to change a few freezers over a 5-day test match. So I was standing up and watching Virendra Sehwag bat, and he kept hitting over the top, and then he smashed one straight down to mid-off. I remember John sending a message at the start of the over, telling that it's a small total, we needed to win, so just just settle down and get to the end of it. But as you know, Viru, he had his own ways of playing, and he smashed it straight into the hands of mid-off, and he walked up the dressing room, and we were all sitting. I didn't even look at Viru because I knew what John was thinking. And suddenly I got up and saw John not next to me. I didn't even realize what was going on in the dressing room. And the match got over, we won by 6 wickets, and at the end, it was a convincing win for India. I went back to the dressing room at the end of the game, and I went around the dressing room congratulating everyone. And there was an absolute pin of silence in the dressing room. So I went up to Anil and said, "What's happened? Everybody is so quiet. We've just beaten Sri Lanka. It's as if that we've lost by 6 wickets." He said, "No, you come out, I'll tell you something." So he took me out. He took me out and said, "John Wright has punched Virendra Sehwag." I said, "What?" Then I went into the dressing room, and I saw Viru in that corner fixing his bat up. I was expecting a bit of blood on his cheeks. He was absolutely fine, and he was cleaning his cricket bat. So I took Anil out and asked, punched me in what? Are you joking or are you serious? He said, no. When Virendra Sehwag walked into the dressing room, John Wright caught him by his collar and took him into the corner of the wall and said, you're never going to play for India again, because that shot would lose the cricket match for us. And I was just outside the dressing room watching the game. I didn't know how to react. We finished, we packed, and we got into the team bus. I used to sit in front and John on the third row, and Virendra Sehwag was right at the back. So I went up to John and sat next to him and said, Coach, what's this punching story going on? He said, no, it's all fine, don't worry. I said, I know it's all fine because there's no noise being made and nobody's been talking about it. But did you actually punch Virendra Sehwag? He said, yes, I did. And then I asked him, did he punch you back? And he said, no. He dare do that. I said, oh God, you're punching a grown-up boy and you expect not to punch him back. So I didn't ask him too many questions, and everything finished. We reached the hotel in London, and as everyone went down the bus, I sat on my first chair. And everyone went down one by one, and Virendra Sehwag was the last man to come out. And I told him, sit next to me. So he sat next to me and I said, did John Wright punch you? He said, who told you? I said, boss, I'm supposed to know. I'm captain of your team. I was about 10 meters away from you, so somebody must have come and told me. He said, yeah, Skip, don't worry, it's fine. It happens. I played a shit shot. He was angry. He punched me. We shook hands and it was fine. You know, he went down the bus and he went into the St. James's Court Hotel, and I sat in the bus for next 10 minutes. And to be honest, I was happy and not sad. I said, I think we are becoming a good side. And I came back to the hotel and I went straight to Sachin's room and said, Sach, I feel we are becoming a good team. He said, why? What makes you feel that? He said, you must have heard about the punching story in the dressing room. He said, yeah, I saw it. I was in one corner having a cup of tea when John caught him by the collar. And I said, I asked Viru. Viru said, no, it's no problem, everything is fine. And I asked John, he said, everything is fine, there's no issues, and there's been punching going on in the dressing room. And not one single soul knew about it outside. And you know how Indian media is. That was the first thing when I entered this room. I asked one of our colleagues that I hope there is no media, because it will be first thing in the morning in the newspaper tomorrow. And nobody got to know in the dressing room. And the crux of the matter for me was that we are a team. We are a team which spent 7, 8, 9 months on the road. That's what Indian team did, even when we were playing, and even now, maybe a bit more now. And it was an environment where there were two hot-headed people who got angry about an incident on a cricket match, but nobody took the matter out of the dressing room. And I think that's a very important essence in a team. It's about staying together. It's about the trust Virendra Sehwag had on John Wright, because a few days later, Virendra Sehwag went on to make 100, a magnificent 100. And I read John Wright saying in the newspaper, he's the best opening batsman India has seen for a while. So for me, not just winning the series in England was special, but for me, that incident and the entire episode was very, very special, and I remembered it in all my life. Not that I'm saying that you keep punching each other in your offices, but what I'm trying to say is that, you know, in spite of such a heated environment, in spite of emotions coming out under pressure, I was lucky enough to lead a group of boys who had trust in each other, and that's the reason I think Indian cricket went forward. I get a lot of credit for India performing well during this period, but I firmly believed that India performed well, and a lot of my credit went to the colleagues I had in the dressing room who were actually wonderful human beings, the likes of Sachin, Rahul, Lakshman, Virendra Sehwag, who rose above the competition and tried to create a team which would make them proud all over the country. So I think for all of us to be a good unit, it's about trusting in each other, having faith in each other, but that has to start from the leader. The leader has to create an environment where each and every one of them are on the same plane, each and every one of them believe in each other, and each and every one of them trust in each other. And I think that's most important in a successful unit. For me, communication is also important in creating a winning unit. It's about knowing exactly what's happening in the office, in your team, and in your group of people. It's about having a similar sort of message, the right message, boiling down to everyone. You may be the best, you may be a bit more experienced, you may be having a bit more runs than the people around you, you may be a bit more successful than the people around you, but it's a platform where all of us had to be on the same level. Yes, you could not treat a Tendulkar in the same level as a young boy, but you try to do it as much as you can so that you create an environment where the best players perform at their best. I see a lot of those skills in Mahendra Singh Dhoni when he became captain of India, and he's done such a wonderful job as captain of India. His communication skills, his making a young player believe in his ability. It's about making a young guy believe that you've been brought into this environment because we believe in you. We believe that you will be successful. It makes a massive difference as a leader, and it makes a massive difference to the young boy when you feel that your leader, your boss, your captain has terrific faith in you, and they expect you to blossom well and to create an environment where you yourself will be important for you to perform. I know time is very short, but another aspect of leadership which I think I should share with all of you with my experience in cricket. I was captain of India for 6 years, and when you're captain of India, you're basically running Indian cricket. But there are times when most of you leaders will have to give it away to someone. That's the rule of life. You don't stay at the top forever. You don't be a CEO forever. You don't be the chairman of a company forever. Somebody else takes over, and you still have to find a way to be successful. That's very hard though. When all your life for 6 months, 6 years, 7 years, for you 10 years, 15 years, you've been at the top, you've called the shots, you run your entire unit, you've run your entire cricket team. Suddenly when someone else takes over you can still create an environment of a leadership. I'm sure it happens in most of your cases. In a lot of your lives, you shift from one position to the other, and obviously you get treated differently. And I faced that experience when I was left out as captain in 2006 because of unfortunate incidents. The only mistake I did was I did not put a note under my coach's door that I am with you. I'm sure that in your corporate world you need to do that. Just put a note under the door of your boss and say that you're someone who I am with. And I think that's another challenge, and that's another form of leadership which most of you, or rather all of us, have to understand and find a way out to solve, because it's a very common thing in everyone's life that you don't stay at the top forever. So what happens when you don't remain a captain of a side? What happens when you don't remain a CEO of a company, but you still have to go and work and earn your living, basically, to put it in a crude way? I think that's where all your leadership skills, that's where all your maturity, all your experience over a period of time is important, because even through that leadership, with your experience of leadership, without being actually the leader, you can create a winning combination. You can actually create an environment where your boss, who could have played under you for a long period of time, it happens in our sport, somebody who you captain becomes your captain, and then you play under him. That's a very common scenario in our sport. But when you get into that situation, there could be an issue of tension, there could be an issue of looking over the shoulder, but I think that's also a situation where your leadership skills, your inherent leadership skills comes on in enhancing your career. So I'm a firm believer that you're not just a leader. You don't just create a winning combination by just being captain. You don't just create a winning combination by actually having the word leader or the boss or the captain next to your name. Even when you have been a leader and you're not the leader at the moment, through your maturity and through your experience, you can actually create a unit who will create winning performances from you. I would like to stop at that because I don't think we've got much time. We'll have an interactive session. Anyway, once again, thank you so much for having me amongst all of you. And hopefully we can share a few more thoughts once we have the panel discussion. Thanks a lot.